So Shavua to everybody, welcome back again. So great to be with you and see your smiling faces. We're on chapter 10, but before we begin chapter 10, I just want to quickly just summarize where we have left off in chapter 9. If you remember, this is where Shaul meets Shmuel. And this is where Shaul, unbeknownst to him, he's about to be told by Shmuel what God's plan is in terms of Shaul being the one who's going to be crowned a king, and Shmuel kind of hinted to him, and Shaul is like, no, I'm just a regular simpleton, etc. But here we go. This is chapter 10, right after Shaul. Shmuel is actually, Shaul leaves his house in search of two donkeys that went astray, and that's how he finds himself in the same city as Shmuel. So he has this lad with him as well. And chapter 9 ends off with Shmuel asking Shaul to tell his lad to please give him some privacy, because he's about to tell or reveal to Shaul what God's plan is. So as it ends off in chapter 9, ve'ashmiacha, and I will let you know, I will sound to you, I will tell you, et Dvar Elohim, the word of God. And here, chapter 10, this is the word of God, so to speak, that he's going to tell him. Vaikach Shmuel et pach hashemen, and Samuel took the flask of oil, vaitzok al rosho vaishakehu, and he poured on his head the oil, which was the symbol of anointment, the symbol of putting into important position. Vaishakehu, when he gave him a kiss, vayomer halo hi meshachacha Adonai al nachalato lenagid, and he kissed him and he told him, the Lord right here has anointed you as the ruler over his people. And Nagid is somebody who fights for his cause, fights for the cause of the people. Lenagid, somebody who tells and is it's more from a lawyer. So your lawyer is your mouthpiece. He's the one who's fighting for you. He's on your side.
Yossi, is the word melech used before?
It was beforehand. Let me show you. It was. Let me just. It was used between God and Shmuel, not yet between Shmuel and Shaul.
Okay.
Here it's lenagid for what's the word for somebody who's your representative?
Your delegate?
More than that, it's a lawyer that is, it's more in the American that he's.
Do you mean a barrister?
No, but when somebody is
acting in your place.
Yeah, it's going to come to me like.
Proxy?
Pardon?
Proxy?
Kind of, but more beyond. He's your, like, he's
your representative, or
he's your when somebody always fights for you in your corner, you know?
Your advocate?
Advocate, that's the word.
Thanks, Miriam.
Okay, your advocate. In other words, you're the one who's always out there for you. That's really his job as a king, is not to line his pockets with gold, to get himself a big house, a palace, to get himself, riches, etc. He's actually responsible to be an advocate for the people. That is really he's now made you, he's giving you a job. Now you're the advocate for the people. And Shmuel is going to give him a sign, kind of reminiscent, if you want. Where was there a sign where a prophet had to give a sign? Think about it just for 1 second. Where do we have now? When I say prophet, you don't have to go into prophets. You can go back to the Chumash.
Do you mean Moshe? Are you speaking about Moshe?
Beautiful, Moshe. Remember that Moshe, when God tells him, "Go, please tell the people, I'm going to take you out. You're going to be my mouthpiece," etc. What does Moshe say? How are they going to believe me?
Can't speak.
How are they going to believe me? So God says, fine, I'm going to give you a sign, and you're going to do such as wonders, etc. And such is. And this is similar to here. So Shmuel tells him, and he says, now I'm going to prove it to you, because when you leave me today, as you're going to go, you're going to pass by the tomb of Rachel. There you will bump into two men. Bigvul Binyamin, Betzeltzach, in just in the territory of Benjamin. So right when you go out of this territory, you're going to go into the territory of Binyamin at Zelach. V'amru elecha, these two gentlemen are going to actually come to you, and they're going to tell you, Nimtzeu ha'atonot asher halachta levakesh. Guess what? Those donkeys that you were looking for, they were already found. In other words, they're going to know exactly why you left. והנה נטש אביך את דברי האתונות, ודאג לכם לאמור מה אעשה לבני. And your father has stopped being concerned about those donkeys, but now he's worrying about you. And he says, how? Where shall I find my son? What am I to do about my son's whereabouts? So exactly that which Shaul was thinking. Remember that Shaul wanted to go back home? He told his servant, he said, you know, we've been gone a long way. I don't want my father to worry about me. Now these two strangers that he's going to bump into in Rachel's tomb are going to tell him exactly that which he thought. V'chalafta misham v'hala, and you shall leave there quickly, and you're going to turn from there. Uvata ad elon tavor, and there you're going to come to the oak tree at Tavor. And there, again, 3 people will find you. You'll bump into 3 people. Olim el ha-Elohim, Beit El, who are going up to Beit El to sacrifice. Echad noseh shlosha gedaim. One will be carrying with him 3 kids, baby goats. Vechad noseh shloshet kikarot lechem. And one is carrying 3 loaves of bread. Vechad noseh nevelyan, and one is carrying a jug full of wine. And ush'alu lecha l'shalom, they are going to ask you for peace. They're going to offer you. V'natnu lecha shtei lechem, and they're actually going to give you 2 loaves of bread. V'lakachta mi'adam, which you will accept and take from them. So he's giving them two signs, just like, again, Moshe. It's very similar. It's very interesting. Moshe had, if you remember, he had 2 signs as well that he gave, showed the both Paro, if you remember, and also the Israelites. After your second interaction with these strangers, Achar ken tavo givat Elohim. From there, you're going to go up to the ascent of God, Asher Sham Netzivei Felishtim, where there are some army units of Plishtim. In other words, there's presence of Plishtim. Remember, Plishtim in those days were subjecting different areas of Israel. So you will come where there is presence from Plishtim. When you arrive into the town, you will encounter a couple of prophets who are coming down from the shrine. And there's a whole parade. There's musical instruments being played, while they are actually also prophesizing. So in other words, there's a very lively, almost like a festival type of atmosphere. There's going to be music. You're going to encounter music, and obviously there is a spiritual moment where there are these prophets that are not just talking about, regular things. They are prophesying at that time. Vetzalcha alecha ruach Adonai. At that moment, the Spirit of God will rest upon you or will grip you. Vehit nabita imam, and you will start to prophesy, you will start to see with them. Venefachta leishacher, at that moment, you will be transformed into a different man. Vehaya, and it shall pass. Ki tavona haotot ha'ele lach, that as these signs happened to you, aseh lecha asher timtza yadecha ki ha'elohim imach, act accordingly, for God is with you. In other words, at that moment you will act in a way, do not be scared, God is with you. Ve'yaradta, yes,
Why the two different brackets?
excellent. The round bracket, let me show you right here.
For reading.
So this is the way it's written, and you notice if you look at, so this is the same. This is the same. This is the same. So tavo, and suddenly we have this is the same. This is the same, like here. But when you read it, there's an extra yud in here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a total different. There is what is called ktiv and kri.
Right. We've talked
written
about that.
and read. So there is also in the Torah these instances where words are written improperly or it looks like a mistake, but we read them in a different way. It happens in the Megillah as well. It happens in Tanakh quite a few times.
Well,
and there's a whole. It's not just it's not that this you know the whoever was the first one to write it made a mistake. These are all expressly made with mistakes because they also mean different things.
What about the fact that one doesn't have any vowels?
Because the only reason why they didn't put it in is because the one with the vowels is the one that we read. So that is why we it's technically both of them didn't have vowels, if you want to say it. The vowels were added later on. One is tevi'ena, which is this one, tevi'ena, ki tevi'ena haotot ha'ele, but we write tavona. Tevi'ena is when you bring it, tavona is they come, the tevi'ena is will bring them, almost kind of carries you. Tavona is when it happens to you. It's grammatic. Again, it's a total different. It's a learning unto itself. If you look at all the places in the Torah where they have, if I can say it, built-in mistakes, but the mistakes also mean something.
Right. We've encountered that a number of times over the years. Yeah.
In many places. So in other words, it's written one way, but the text is read another way, and where we have the vowels or the nekudot, that's where we read them. You notice that as well. Beyond that, there is the note right there. There's nothing on this side. There's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's written that way in the text, but we read it tavona. Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Very deceptive. Let me just stop the annotate. Otherwise I can't. So once you have this prophecy, again, you will act accordingly. Do not be scared because God is with you. He's supporting you. Ve'yaradta lefanai hagilgal. After that, you are going down to the Gilgal ahead of me. V'nei anochi yored elecha, and I will also meet you there. Why? Lahalot olot, lizboach zivchei shelamim. We will go and offer burnt offerings and offer sacrifices of well-being. Shiv'at yamim tochel ad boyelecha. Wait 7 days until I come to you. V'hodati lecha et asher ta'aseh. And I will instruct you as to what to do next. In other words, you're going to go down, wait for me there, because I'm going to meet you there in 7 days, and you will do accordingly. You're going to bring burnt offerings, and then I will help you through. By the way, again, this is quite interesting. Again, if you notice, this week's parsha is called Parshat Shmini on the 8th day. What happened on the 7th days? Again, 7 days was the inauguration of the Kohanim. So it's similar to this again. There's a parallel in terms of bringing an offering. There's a whole celebration, and then afterwards, see what happens. In Judaism, the number 7. There are many important numbers. If perhaps you ask somebody, what's the most important number? People say, "Oh, Chai, 18 is an important life," which is an important life. But as well, there are other numbers that are important. 4, for instance, if you look at 4 in the holiday that's coming up in Passover, it's a redundant number that keeps on coming up again. One of the important numbers as well is number 7. 7 is what is called or considered a building block number. The world was created in 7 days. 7 years Shemitah and 49, and then the next year, and then again the world, and you have to keep the land fat. 7 is a building block. And you know, a bride, you know, goes around as a sign of building something new as well, acquisition, but also building something new. If you remember what happened with Joshua and Jericho,
7 times around.
7 times.
Sometimes, yeah.
7 times again. That number 7 is a building. It's establishing something. And here again, you see it 7 days as well. So that number is not just haphazard. It's something that happens when you have what do you have after a wedding?
7
For
times.
Sheva Brachot.
Sheva brachot. For 7 days, you're established. In other words, you're really creating. It's not just living and doing that. You're creating that union is an establishment of something permanent. That's what 7 really represents. Permanency, establishing, building something concrete. Okay. So now this is also here. 7 days. Something concrete is about to happen. This is not just a nice little thing. V'haya ke'afnoto shichmo lalechet me'im Shmuel. And just as he turned and he turns his shoulder from Shmuel, v'yafoch lo Elohim levacher. God suddenly implanted or changed with him a new heart. V'yavo kol ha'otot ha'ele bayom ha'u. And all those signs that Shmuel had spoken about, meeting those 2 men in Bethlehem, and then the 3 men later on in the Oak of Tabor, all those came to be. Okay? And now Tzamach Sagur, we're coming into a new thought.
New thought, right.
Vayavohu Sham Hagivata, and after all those 2 signs, they came up to Giv'ah. That's Shaul and his right hand man, his helper. V'nech hevel nevi'im likrato, and lo and behold, just as Shmuel said, there is a group of prophets that are coming towards Shaul. Vatitzlach alav ruach Elohim, and thereupon he was gripped by the Spirit of God, Vaitnabe betocham, and he as well started to prophesy amongst them. So in other words, he was connected now spiritually with God. Vahi kol yod'om et Moshe Shom, and it was all that previously knew him before that day. Vayir'u veineim nevi'im niba, and they saw that he started to prophesy. If you notice, by the way, it's very interesting. This is very, very, very super rare. I can't tell you if I know of any other place that is except in Shirat Hayam. If you notice, there's a samach again inside the pasuk. It's not after the verse; it's in the middle of pasuk. We have a space. Do you see how it's written? Even there's like a tab. Okay. Vayomer ha'am ish el re'ehu, and one spoke to the other, saying, Ma ze haya leven Kish? What has come over Ben Kish, which is another name of calling Shaul? Hagam Shaul ban V'im? Is Shaul also among the prophets? So obviously now suddenly they see a new spirit in Shaul, something of a heightened spiritual state. So people noticed a difference. Vayan ish misham, and there another person spoke. Vayomer umi avihem, and he said, "Who are their fathers?" Al ken hayta lemashal hagam Shaul ban V'im, and thus the proverb rose is Shaul too among the prophets. In other words, there was a little like a jingle or a little song that was sung with regards to trying to explain who Shaul was. Vaychal mehit nabot, and when he finally stopped prophesizing, Vayavo habama, and he entered the shrine. Vayomer dod Shaul elav, and the uncle of Shaul asked him, Ve'el naro an halachtem, where were you gone? So in other words, finally his uncle asked, where were you? Vayomer levakesh et hatonot, and he said, I went to go look for those lost donkeys. Venire chi'ain, and when we saw that they were not to be found, vanavo el Shmuel, we happened to bump into Samuel. Vayomer dot Shaul, and so the uncle once again asked him, Hagidan Ali, please tell me, Ma amar lachem Shmuel, what did you had a conversation with that man? What anything interesting that he told you? Vayomer Shaul el dodo, and there Shaul
Said
spoke
to
to
his
his uncle,
uncle,
saying, Haged higid lanu ki nimtzeu hatonot. He told us that the donkeys were already found. Vedvar hamlucha lo higid lo asher amar Shmuel. However, he did not reveal anything to him about the kingship, which Shmuel had told Shaul, which he had told him. So he did not tell him. Vaytzaek Shmuel et ha'am. So there's a little. Do you see the little pay over here?
Yep.
So it's also a little bit of a pause. Maybe it's less so than a samech, but it's next thought as well. Patuach. Vayatzek Shmuel etam. This is obviously after 7 days. Shmuel now is on the scene. He made it to the town, took the Greyhound bus, made it 7 days later, and he gathered them out and he yelled out, summoned to the people, El Adonai HaMitzpah, and he called them up to meet them in Mitzpah. Vayomer El Bnei Israel. Once again, we have a very weird text over here. It's Patuach. If you notice, Patuach is the rest of the line is open. Do you see it?
Mhm.
There's nothing. So that's why the pay Patuach Sagur is, I believe, like
Closed.
6 spaces or 9 spaces, and then it's written again. Okay, but here it's very strange. This I don't know of any. Off the top of my head, I don't know any other place where in middle of a pasuk it's cut. Vayomer el Bnei Israel, he spoke to Bnei Israel, to the people gathered there. Ko amar Adonai Elohei Israel, thus said the Lord, God of Israel. Anochi heleiti et Israel mitzrayim, I'm the Lord who brought up the Israelites from Egypt. Vatzilatchem miad Mitzrayim, and I delivered you, I saved you from the hand of the pressing hand of Egypt. Umiad kol hamamlachot halochatzim etchem, and from all the different kingdoms who have oppressed you. In other words, I've been your savior. Vatem hayom me'astem et Elohechem. However, today you have rejected, you have turned away from your God. Asher hu moshia lachem, who has delivered you all the time. Mikol ra'otechem v'tzarotechem, from all the bad and calamities and troubles which you've experienced. Vatomru lo, and you express to God, Ki melech tasim aleinu, you want a flesh and blood king. You ask God to place a king upon you. Ve'ata, and now, hityatzvu lifnei Adonai, gather yourself and stand up, prepared before God, leshiftechem ul alfechem, your tribes and your clans, for something important is about to happen. Vayakrev Shmuel et kol shiftei Israel, vaylached shevet Binyamin. And so Shmuel gathered all of the tribes of Israel, vaylached shevet Binyamin, and the lot indicated the tribe of Binyamin. So what exactly happens here? So not everybody obviously made it there, right? You can when you say gathered all the tribes, it's the main players who are going to go back to the clans, to the tribes, and tell God's words. In other words, this is not a regathering of the entire people. That would be almost impossible, and it would take especially a long time. So it's the leaders and those representatives, and of course some of the groups as well. He gathers all, And there is a specific attention now given to the Shevet of Binyamin. Vayakrev et Shevet Binyamin lemishpechotav. And Samuel instructed the tribe of Benjamin to please come forward according to the clans. Vati lached mishpachat hamatri. And from within the tribe of Matri was highlighted. There are some commentaries who say, what do you mean highlighted and then lots and all that stuff? This has to do with what the Kohen Gadol wore, which is the Urim v'Tumim, which was the breastplate, and the breastplate would different stones would be lit when God specifically wanted to speak or to send certain messages. If you remember, each stone on the tablet represented a different tribe. So here, likely the tribe of Binyamin's stone would be the one that was highlighted. And that was mean by the lot. That would be indication that that is what God wants to speak to, or God wants to pay special attention to. I heard once, it was called an ephod, right? Or that was the original iPad, right? iPhod sounds like iPad, right? But that's but here, in any event, obviously Shevet Binyamin is highlighted from everyone, and within the tribe of Binyamin, the family of Matri, Vailachet Shaul ben Kish, and then specifically, Shaul was summoned, Vavakshuhu velo nimtza, but when they asked for him, tried to look for him, he was nowhere to be found. Vaishalu od baronai, hava od halom ish. They inquired of the Lord again, has anyone else come here? Vayomer Adonai, hinehu nichba el hakelim. And the Lord replied, yes, he is hiding amongst all of the people's baggage, amongst all the that which they traveled with. So imagine, he's keeping a low profile. Vayarutsu vaikachuhu misham, and so they ran. People who were instructed to go get him, and they brought him from there. Vayatzev betoch ha'am, and he took his place among the people. Vaigba mikol ha'am, and he stood taller. He was raised higher almost from all the people there. Mishichmo v'mala. It's really from his shoulders up. So he stood. It's a saying. He stood a head taller than everybody else. He was very clearly. He stood out from amongst the people. That's really what this pasuk is saying. He was different than everybody else. He really stood out from the crowd. Vayomer Shmuel el kol ha'am, and there Samuel spoke out to the entire people, those who are gathered here. Haritem asher bachar bo Adonai. Do you see the one whom the Lord has chosen? Ki ein kamohu bechol ha'am, for there is none like him amongst the entire nation. Vayariu chol ha'am vayimru yechi hamelech, and there the whole crowd shouted or saluted, and they said, "Long live the king." By the Ben Shmuel, it's very, I don't know about you, but it's super dramatic. Like you're looking at what Shaul knows. And you really see the type of person that he was. He was really an anav. He was really somebody who was humble. He didn't want to accept this, like and the idea of being king, and yet this is the hand of God. As I mentioned to you beforehand, the people wanted a king, but the king was chosen by whom?
Shmuel. Well, by God.
By God.
Yeah.
Through Shmuel, but
yeah.
It's kind of like a funny dichotomy where the people feel, they want to have a king just like all the other nations, a human being who can maybe they can see the king, right? They understand that God is the ultimate king, but it's very hard for them to relate with God. Now they want somebody who's flesh and blood as somebody who they can see as their leader. Part of it perhaps maybe because of what they've seen, how leadership has been passed down, and we have that example from this in this book, from the Kohen Gadol Eli and his two children, and the corruption. Then you see Shmuel and his two children, and that doesn't follow through, and that the people had almost enough, and now they want somebody who they can choose, but again, they don't really choose that king as well.
So, Yossi, I don't understand this. Like I mentioned it, I think, what was it, 2 weeks ago? So
Okay.
why Saul is like a tragic figure as first king? Why would Saul be chosen?
Again, he stood clearly at this point in time. You can't look back. I think that's the beauty of that there is an element of human error. And exactly as God also said, in terms of, you will see that it's going to be, there's going to be, they wanted, even though it's godly chosen and somewhat run by God, but now it's still executed by a human being. And we see it by the error of a human being. Rather than them taking responsibility, now they are being led as well astray. Do you see the beforehand it was God, and then everybody had their freedom, so to speak. And some of them went astray. Now you have God. Now you have someone kind of like an intermediary, if you want to see, kind of a king. And if the king goes astray, of course everybody's going to go astray. So now they're actually losing, if you want to say, their own freedom by choosing. But then they're going to blame, kind of like the king did it for us. It's kind of almost as a cop out for the people. It's kind of, I didn't do it. That's what I was. And you saw it, right? Like you saw it in World War II. When people tell you, well, I would never have done it, except that's what I was told to do, and I was scared, so I followed with those orders. But and they basically wash themselves from it, right?
Yeah. It's almost like a study of a tragic person.
Yes and no, but at that point he's clearly stood out from amongst the nations. In other words, he had a very, very hopeful future. He was the first draft pick, and sometimes the draft pick comes out and becomes golden. Sometimes it's not always like that, but he was the first draft pick, God's first draft pick.
Would you say he's a Shakespearean figure, like in a Shakespearean tragedy, where the person has greatness, but has also a flawed character, which brings him down?
It's clearly that he was flawed. Part of it, again, I mentioned, it's a great way of looking at it. It's certainly very, very dramatic. But I think it also highlights the fact that now you have human error in the picture, but human error in a global leadership, if you want to look at its structure, not just from everybody how they're behaving, but now even the one that's supposed to be much greater than everybody still is a human being and is flawed. Exactly. And if that person is flawed, the one who you thought is above everybody is the king, then certainly everybody else underneath him who are following or led by him are also going to go astray, or at least not follow fully. But I don't think again, it's not fully tragic. There are definitely tragic elements to it, Farla. I think you have to see it as evolution in terms of the political structure. As I said, the leadership structure for the Israelites dramatically changed. And he's the first person to try out. There is no model for him, right? He's not following, right, any particular how the person before him did it. He's actually the first person to go at it, if you want to look at it. So
he goes against God, and
Eventually,
it's like he kind of abandons God. So I don't understand why God. Anyway, I guess it's a study. It's to point out that he didn't idolize God.
No, I don't think I think this is the beauty of it, that it's very clear that even though it's chosen by God, as I mentioned, the element of the humanistic element is not being taken away. That choice, he's directed, he's expected to have he's got qualities that set him apart, but his humanistic natures are not taken away from him. Suddenly he doesn't become this super like you have in Greek mythology, like this king, oh, Zeus, it becomes like beyond, doesn't no longer has human. No, these guys are, he still, even though has these qualities that are super or above everybody else, he still has the same faults or the weaknesses that each and every human being has. And that's what he succumbs as well. And we see it time and time again. We see it with Shimshon, for instance, right? Shimshon is given also these superpowers, and at the end, it's his human instincts are the ones that actually his downfall. So it's the same thing here. I think the beauty of our religion is that God doesn't put somebody who's perfect and then remains him and then he'll do perfect, because then that's not what human nature is. And I think if we strive for perfection, what we strive is for betterment. In other words, we know where we are. Can we be better? And once we get there, can we be better from that? It doesn't mean that we'll be perfect, but can we do better than that? And I think that is part of human, or the evolution of humanity. And that is the beauty of Judaism, is that we also highlight where we went wrong. We highlight it. We have faults, and we need to work on such and such and such and such and such. And yes, and those are not happy occasions during our year, our cycle, but we have to highlight that we have deficiencies. We're not perfect, and there are other religions who've never done anything wrong in their life. They're perfect and they're never making mistakes. And they live a lie. It's a lie. It's a total lie, because everybody makes a mistake. If not, then you're not human.
Yeah.
That is what all our laws are there, is recognizing that if we didn't have law, then that's what we would do. Or maybe we would be inclined to behave in a certain way.
Also, if there was a perfection in people, there'd be nothing less to strive for.
Exactly.
And you need to have an objective in life.
Exactly. I'll use this example, if you had, I don't know what car you're driving, but if I give you a choice, would you like to drive what you're driving, and let's say it's a couple of years old, or the newer model that's coming out next year? What would you choose?
Me?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe a Tesla.
No, I'm saying whatever. Let's say, so you're driving right now with Tesla from 2 years ago, right?
Well, no, but yes. Okay.
Now I offered you, would you like to keep your Tesla, or I'll give you a brand new Tesla from this year? What would you choose?
The latter.
Right. And you're driving the newer one for 2 years, and in 2027, I'll say, do you want to keep that Tesla from 2024 or at 2027? What would you choose?
Well, if I'm still alive, I choose the 27.
27. So, but in 2024, you bought the best car. I just gave you the best Tesla. If it's the best Tesla, what would you want at 2027? Because nothing is perfect. Also, you realize that there's new technology, there's suddenly this, and the engine is that, and the battery life is longer. Every single time. But if you tell somebody from 1955, what was the best car, and they'll tell you that was the best car, the technology and all that. But you compare it to today, and you'll say, oh my God, it might be beautiful and it's classic and it's rare now but in terms of automotive capabilities, it might not stand up to a Honda Civic or you know what I mean, in what it can do. But as well, everything else continues. There is always evolution, or you'd still be driving, or I should say, still be manning a donkey, and we'd be driving, or a horse, and that's what we would be riding around in transport. No, but there's an evolution, and now from combustion. Now we're looking at different, who knows, and then maybe there's going to be hydrogen batteries in 15, 20 years, 30 years. And people are going to look at a Tesla and say, oh my God, that technology is ancient. You know, who uses that in batteries? I mean, come on. And from that, then there's going to be I don't know, another technology, air. Who knows what will be. But the idea, that is the beauty also of human, is that we're in a constant state of flux and change. And you see it within even the way God builds it. He doesn't take away the error. The human element, God will not play around. God instructs, God gives you a clue, He gives you a roadmap. Now, if you choose or don't choose, you'll pay the consequences, etc. But that is still built into it. And that's not a failure. It's a failure from Shaul's. It's not a failure from God. It's that's our fault, which I think is a beautiful thing. But in terms of the whole, if it would be perfect, then there'd be nothing wrong, like Esther said, and half of the books would not be written. It'd be just, that's it. That understand? It's how we come out of it, whether we learn our lessons or not, etc. But that's a beauty part. And as well as I mentioned earlier, I truly believe that if somebody did a study, whether it's psychological or physical, I really believe as well Shaul in his old age had some kind of dementia or whatever it might be, had definitely some kind of an issue that and you can clearly see that he was demented or he went literally psychologically crazy. He went after David, but let's not go there right now because God willing, we'll read about it. But that is the way that I see it, because it just doesn't happen, overnight. And he definitely had insecurities, etc. And as he got old, and it drives him nuts. But that's
Maybe too much ecstasy.
Pardon?
Maybe too much ecstasy.
Perhaps. So, anyways, this is we didn't. So he's chosen again. He's pulled out from amongst all the where everybody left their belongings, right? They must have had like a big locker room there, whatever, or people left their stuff. He was hiding amongst all the stuff. He was pulled out, and they crown him. They rejoice around him. Vaydaber Shmuel el ha'am, and Shmuel there spoke to the entire people who are gathered there. Et mishpat hamelucha, the rules of the monarchy. Vaychtov basefer, and he recorded it in the documents of the day. Vayanach lifnei Adonai, and he placed it before God, which means it was placed in the Mishkan, somewhere in where all the vessels were. Vayshalach Shemuel et kol ha'amish leveto, and after Shemuel spoke all this and shared it with the people, he sent everyone back to their homes. V'gam Shaul halach leveto Giv'ata. Shaul also returned back home to Giv'ata. Va'ilchu imo hachayil, and with him he was escorted with upstanding men, or it can also be literally translated as he had security. Asher naga Elohim belibam.
How are you?
Men who also had spirituality in them. In other words, God has touched them as well, not just regular people who were upstanding. Uvnei Velial Amru. However, there were also those outsiders, those scoundrels, or if you want to say bums kind of thing, outsiders. They said, "Ma Yoshienu ze, what is this fellow? What is he going to save us from? Vayiv Zuhu, and they scorned, they made fun of him. Kamsom almost Zevel, they ridiculed him. Velo heviu lo mincha. They did not bring any gifts to him. Vahi kemacharish, but he pretended not to mind. Okay, so in other words, there was some kind of ceremony where once people recognized that he was going to be the king, he was given some kind, and you see it quite often, whether it's just flowers, some kind of ceremonial gifts of recognizing this person as being the leader. and these outsiders or these scandals, these people who mockers, who specifically abstained from giving him, and Shaul pretended not to mind. Very important to hear, but to remind that he pretended that he did not mind. And that is the end of chapter 10. And now we find ourselves in Jewish history with the first crowned king of Israel. Any questions? So you see, this is appropriate because, you know, next door and soon to be as well, they're also going into elections. It's an election year now. Here we're also I don't know if you can say quite an election year, but this is also a leadership. Yes, Peter.
It sort of seems to me that the recognition and crowning of the king was a pretty local affair. How did it, the word in French is rayonnement, how was this broadcast across the larger territories?
So remember that it was a gathering of all of the tribes. And by that, it was all the leaders, those clans, before Shmuel gathers everybody. And then from that, if you remember, the tribe of Binyamin is called forward. From within the tribe of Binyamin, one family, Matri, is called forward. And then Shaul is chosen. So you have representative look at it like we have right now, you know, like you have in every writing sits in Ottawa. Do you know what, Peter, what goes on in Ottawa every single day when they're making? No, but your vote voted for somebody who's going to represent you. And they're representing you in Ottawa, and then they come back and then they tell, of course, today we you know, you can broadcast it, you can see it, it's much easier to travel to Ottawa and sit, you know, and if you want to hear what's being discussed. But that's what I'm saying. It was impossible for the entire nation to be there to kind
So it was representative monarchy as opposed to representative democracy.
Right. It was definitely not democracy.
No.
There are very few places in the world today, even that we think that we call democracies, if you look at it theologically, and I'm not going to go there as well, that are not really, we deem them to be democracies. But if you look at the definition of what democracy is, there are very few places in the world that are actually democracies.
That's right.
in its true form of what it really means. You know, we defined it because really the idea of democracy can't really exist if you in its purest form. So there's always nothing can be 100%. You know what I mean? So it's but yes, this was definitely not democracy. This was actually brought, as I mentioned before, and it was already pre-chosen by God. If anything, it's not that you know, all the people, even the representatives there, voted for who they wanted. It was God actually who chose Shaul from amongst all the people there. Clearly, he was seen by everybody as being different and outstanding from everybody there. And I think the interesting thing that you can see, it's not like people are saying, you know, like, do you remember the movie Shrek?
Yep.
You remember? And Shrek has this question, right? As he's about to go on a quest, who wants to come with me, right? Or who knows where the castle is? And you see the donkey jumping in the back, you know, pick me, you know? So you don't have kind of here, you know, amongst the people, you know, Shmuel asking, you know, we're going to look for a king. Who do you think should be king? And oh, you know, I vote for that guy. Now, you know, they're waiting. Even in the state of asking for a king, the people still don't know the idea of voting or the idea of choosing someone. They just know they want a structure, and even the kings in the other nations were not chosen democratically, right? And it was chosen whoever was, you know, king in one kingdom, however they were chosen, usually most likely the first one must have been the most powerful, richest, strongest person, took it upon himself, and then he handed that down to his children, right? Like, et cetera, et cetera. How's the first monarch a monarch? Like, who chose, right? The first monarch of it's from families, and I mean, I don't know all, but you look at even the monarchs, you know, like in England, it started mainly from Germany and this and that, and how they came together, and the family split, and so that they had, you know, royal blood. But how the first royal blood? How did that happen? What their blood was different than anybody else's? No. However, they were chosen, and then it was passed down. But it was definitely not democratically, and even today, King Charles was not democratically chosen as the king. And when he, it happens in a process, but it's the idea that there is now a human level of control. Maybe that's the best way of kind of understanding it. And beyond just an Avi who is spiritually connected to God, unlike most of us, if you want to look at what the people are saying, we can't really relate to it, even though this guy is great and he speaks to God, but you know, it's not like us. We want somebody more like a commoner who understands kind of, you know, us, and he will be the intermediary between maybe the Navi and God himself, however you want to look at it. But now we have somebody who understands us better. Maybe that's the best way of looking at it. But even within that whole system, it's still chosen by God, who amongst the people has the virtues to be that person. And again, as Farla highlighted, still not taking away the faults and all the deficiencies as a human being in that position. Okay, which is part and parcel of the whole package, which is a beautiful thing to see it. That's not being removed. We're not making this person a perfect. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. Even we say Lokam be'Israel kemoshe od, even though no one will in other words, Moshe was the greatest Navi that we ever had. And Moshe even himself made a couple of mistakes. So it's, you know, and we highlighted that he's still a human being. Even though he's the greatest, right? He's our number 99, right? He's the great one.
Just our patriarchs.
Pardon?
If you want to see great and flawed characters.
But that's the strength of our religion, is that we know that we're imperfect, but we strive to repair those imperfections, and that is what makes us strong, is when we're striving to get better. Now, if you're perfect, there's nothing for you to do anymore, as Esther said. So that is I think the beauty of and then the kings, they build upon it, and sometimes they go the other way, but you'll see from David, they try to repair that which is in a state of disrepair. So, which is a beautiful thing, and that's how that's how it ascends. At the same time, it can also descend. But that's the beauty of it. Any other questions, remarks?
That's it. Good.
Beautiful.